You are now tuned in to Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette, where your host, Annette Harris, analyze intriguing life questions and concerns, such as, do Christians suffer from mental illness? Have you wondered why they act abnormal? Or you may ask, what is really going on in their minds? Do you need Annette? Well, keep listening for a biblical understanding of the psychology of the mind.
Great afternoon and welcome to another wonderful session of and I am your host, Annette Harris. Thank you so much for joining us on today, for watching and or listening. Before we go further, of course, we must acknowledge the Lord in prayer. Apostle, would you please do us the honors?
Absolutely. Father God, in the name of Jesus, we thank you for your goodness and your mercy. We thank you, God, for your loving kindness is better than life. We thank you for this platform. We thank you for every listener, God, even to this topic. God, give us wisdom and knowledge and understanding and the sensitivity needed to navigate through such sensitive subject matter. Let it bring healing and restoration for your glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you for that wonderful prayer. And yes, this is a sensitive topic we're going to talk about on today. But our opening scripture is the first part of Hosea 4 and 6, and it states, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee. And again, we are grateful to be here on another Wednesday, another session, another time for us to come before you on this wonderful platform here at Intellectual Radio. And I want to let you know there are three different ways that you can listen to us on. You can go to the station's website, which is intellectualradio.com, all one word, intellectualradio.com, to hear us. And then also, I have a Facebook Live feed going on my personal page, Annette, known as Annette. And then also, we're on YouTube Live at the present time. If you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, why don't you take time out right now? Go to my YouTube channel. You can find us there live. I am grateful because I have Apostle Dion Hunt here in the studio with us on this afternoon. He's not a guest. He is a regular, and if you stay tuned with Mind, Body, and Soul, you're going to see him a whole lot more.
Absolutely.
Yes. We are grateful because the Lord has opened up doors and blessing us, and I am grateful. So let's see here. Facebook Live feed. I see you starting to come in and you're sharing, and I appreciate you and I thank you so much. I see you on here, Brandy and Carolyn Nesbitt, and I am going to see if I can try and I hate missing people's names. My goodness. Robert Downer Jr., thank you for watching on today.
Yes.
Final Melody
Right.
being represented. So let's see here. Beatrice Carter, I see you on as well. Thank you so much for joining us on today. You know, today's topic, DVAM, the acronym. I am, so we listen to the different themes for certain months.
Mm-hmm.
Some months carry various themes.
Mm.
We also know this month of October to be Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
Yes.
And I know there are a slew of other names that is being given. But I am, we want to talk today about domestic violence abuse. And when you and I were trying to get today's subject on today, one thing that kept popping out of my mind was domestic violence. And, I said, well, maybe we should touch on this because I was even reading someone else's post on maybe about a couple of weeks ago, and they were kind of talking about domestic violence abuse, and I said that kept coming up in my mind, and then when we were talking, and I said, let's just try and tackle this on today. So let's see, domestic violence abuse. I have a few articles I want to pull up, and I love the angle that Apostle Dion Hunt says that he wants to take with this one today. Let me first ask you, did I even ask you how you were doing today? How are you doing?
Not on air,
Okay.
but you did ask me how I was. I'm doing wonderful.
Good,
Doing
good,
great.
good. I am
Glad to be here.
so glad you're doing wonderful, and you seem like you're eager and ready for today's session. Uh,
Eager. This is a very sensitive topic. Um, Even if you just focus on victims of domestic violence, this is a very, very difficult and sensitive topic rather to deal with, because of the shame and the embarrassment and even fear that's associated with it. And so I'm ready, um, and I think that we should deal with this. I think this is a very prime time, not just in the church, but in the political arena and in just today's culture, for us to deal with this topic.
yes, definitely. And I think we even talked about, of course, you had the Me Too movement and all of that
Yes.
stuff. That's something that's definitely it has been in the news like constantly, and it almost seems like every day
Hmm.
when you think about it. So yeah, domestic violence. You also mentioned, I think we were kind of half talking a little bit earlier about a post that you saw.
Yes, I saw a post. Just you're on social media and you're flipping through videos, and I saw a post of a video of a woman who was terrified. She had gone into taken up her pet to a veterinarian, and she was with her boyfriend, and what was happening was the boyfriend had taken her hostage, and the only thing that he would allow her, I guess, after 2 days of bondage, he agreed to let her take her dog to the vet, but he had a gun on him, and he had been abusing her for 48 hours straight. And what ended up happening is, in the video, she slipped the vet a note, asking them to call and the authorities. And it just, when I saw it, my heart just sank. I felt so many things. I felt so bad for her. I felt angry at him, but I also could not believe her courage. The courage that it took to just break free, to seize that moment and break free from that bondage. And it struck me. Um, and when it struck me, I had no idea that we were in Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And but it struck me for some reason. And I guess because all this sensitivity and all these things that are coming to light that women are dealing with and have been dealing with, since the beginning of time. I didn't know, and I feel bad that I did not know how badly women have it. It's it's appalling. It's embarrassing. And even when you look at how the ignorance of men, not knowing what women, not knowing what our wives, not knowing what our daughters or our sisters go through on a daily basis, just being a woman, how they are made targets. It really struck me, and I just felt like I shared it, and I felt like I had to make a statement concerning it. I stand against domestic violence. That's my stance. I have a stance against it. And no matter what the situation is, no matter who it is, even in the church, I don't care if he has a title. I don't care who he is. Call the police, get help, because this is something that um, we should uh, advocate against and bring an end to.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm listening to you, and you mentioned about how how women really go through, and as a man, you're looking at it and you're like, you don't really realize what we have to deal with. Now, of course, we can't just say it's just the women being abused, because men are being abused too. But it is more common
It's
and
more
more
prevalent in with
for women
women.
to
Yeah.
be.
And that's a fair statement. It is. It really is. But the difference is that men, we are physically stronger. We are. Um, I believe that it is bad both ways. Violence is violence and abuse is abuse, no matter what your gender is. But when you have someone who is physically stronger than you, taking their anger and aggression out on you, I believe that that's a slightly different way of looking. You know, it makes all the difference in the world. And so um, there's so much stuff that we can talk about, and I'm sure we're going to get to. But something happened to me even this morning when I woke up, and just my mind was on this show. I'm talking like 5:30 this morning, and I heard my daughter, who's a freshman in high school. She's getting up and she's preparing for school, and it hit me. The seasons are starting to change. Um, Daylight hours are starting to change. When she goes out and waits for that bus, it's still not completely light outside. And when I tell you, my heart just started racing just thinking about that. I got up and I made sure that she was not alone. You see, because I'm seeing how just by being a female, just by being a girl, how she can be a target to someone who just wants to take advantage of her. And I think that's a major difference.
Right, right. Yeah, I can understand that. And that's admirable of you. You can go ahead and touch that button. That's admirable of you, of course, as a dad to,
Yes.
to take on that feeling, of course, that responsibility and making sure your daughter is okay. I think I have a call on the line. Mind, body, and soul with Annette.
God bless you. This is Apostle Hunt. How you doing?
Wonderful.
This is
How
Dr. Hunt.
wonderful. How are you, Dr. Hunt?
The Lord is blessing. The Lord is blessing.
Indeed, he is. Indeed, he is.
Yes, yes.
So you're calling in today to share in this topic with us?
Yes, I just tuned in. I was a little busy, but Apostle was telling me about this awesome um, subject matter. And he and I have been having some discussions about it for days. As a matter of fact, I did a Facebook Live on abuse. It's entitled Adam, You Hypocrite. Adam, You Hypocrite.
Yeah.
And dealing with how in this season, I sensed something that was very, very vital. I sensed that from the White House to the Supreme Court,
Yes,
to the church, to everywhere you go, women seemingly are being abused. And it's one of those silent things where it's been going on so long until people just feel like it's normal. And people are living with it like it should be acceptable. And but it's not acceptable. When I start teaching on this subject, I always get a few eyebrows from men because I do not hold the traditional view that women are inferior to men. I don't hold that view. The Bible says when God created Adam, he created him from the dust of the ground. And then he created Adam from Eve from the rib from his side. Yeah, I know what people traditionally say about that, but there is a Hebrew word there for bone. Adam said, "You're a bone of my bone, you're flesh of my flesh. You shall be called woman, for you were taken out of man." Now, there's a word in the Hebrew there, estim, for bone, which means that it means you are as strong as me. It means as strong as, and it means same substance. And so God created her to be the same substance that he is. And it means as strong as. So what is the bone but the strongest part of the human body?
Yes.
So she was created his strength and from his strength. I like to say that the woman was created from the strongest part of man and the weakest part of man simultaneously. Bone of his bone, flesh of his flesh.
My God.
She shall be called woman, but she was taken out of man. So I don't hold this traditional teaching that the woman is inferior. As a matter of fact, I believe that she is equal and that God created her to be with the man, to be co-inhabitants and co-rulers over this earth realm. Maybe in his divine order, he decided to make the man their head. But there is something, I know there's an argument that people want to give me. Well, what about God said for the woman to submit to the man? And I'll tell any man, if you want to really get in some trouble in your marriage, just throw the Bible at your wife and tell her that she's supposed to submit to you and see how much trouble you're going to get in. You see? Because submission was never, we were never told to tell her to submit. We were never told to live with her as though she is submissive. What we were told was this. We were told to love her.
Amen.
That's right.
Amen.
And honor her. That's what we were told. Now watch this. It's going to get really good. Submission is a sign of strength. Any person who is strong and who have their own will, that can subdue their own will and submit because it is their will to do so, that's a strong woman.
Yeah.
That's a strong person because she doesn't have to. It's a matter of her will. And so I just think that, we got a long way to go in our society, in our culture. The church covers up abuse, husbands, bishops, apostles, pastors, beating their wives and choking their wives and verbally abusing their wives and all types of assault going on in the home. Something is wrong with this picture, you see. And so I know I didn't want to take up no time. I just wanted to call in and put in my 2 cents. One of the things that you can look at, and I'm going to say it, I know we live on the radio, but, and I know I'm probably get some backlash on this, but you can look at the president's wife, mm-hmm. and you can see the body language. I saw some video of Justice Kavanaugh's wife, and I saw the body language. I recognized the body language, you see. And so this is back with a vengeance. And it's as bad as racism. Just like we tell white people all the time, they're privileged and they don't have a clue of what it's like to be racially profiled. We as men are privileged. There are male privileges, and we have no clue of what it feels like to be put down and to be profiled and made to feel inferior because you're a woman. Something is wrong with this picture, and we'll never be able to co-rule this realm without the woman coming to her rightful place to sit side by side with a man, not under his feet, but side by side with him.
That's so true. I mean, you said a mouthful. I'm sorry. I always get caught up when you call in because you make us think, you take us there, and you said some very important things there. Now, I know you're trying to get off the phone so we can continue on with the show, but you touched on what we want to address in terms of, the church and how the church is responding and or not responding. Can you touch on a little bit of that before you hang up the phone, because it is very important to hear the church's response, what it should be, because obviously it's not necessarily there right now. I'm trying to say it as nice as I can, but the world needs to see how the church is responding.
I did a Facebook Live about a week or so ago, and on that live, I talked and I addressed the daughters. The Hebrew word for daughter is the word bath, Bath, bath. It's the prefix for Bathsheba. Bathsheba name meant daughter of an oath. And one of the things that word bath or daughter means, it means the apple of the eye.
Yes.
The apple of the eye. And here's what's got to happen. The first thing that has to happen is that men have to start empowering their daughters. Fathers got to empower their daughters. And if the empowerment from the father comes to the daughter and she gets the reassurance and the assurance of who she is and her strength and the virtue that that he speaks into her life is there, then she can stand tall. So the first thing that has to happen is that the fathers have to empower their daughters. And so that begins to stop the cycle.
Yes.
But another thing that will stop the cycle is it has to be addressed from the pulpit. It has to be addressed openly from the pulpit. The leader, the pastor, the people who are in authority have to take no prisoners when it comes to this. Take no prisoners. I've been saying it for years. I tell people, I tell women, if he hits you, call the police and have him arrested. I don't care how many letters he got behind his name. I don't care if he's apostle, bishop, pastor. It doesn't matter who he is. First, call the police and have him arrested. Put him in jail. Lock him up. That's number one. Don't put up with it. Don't be silent. I'm gonna get in trouble. I'm gonna get in trouble. But that's number one. And since I am a equal opportunity non-abuser, if she hits you, call the police. And I get a little kick out of it because I always say, if she hits you, call the police on her and have her arrested, and then act like you're scared when the police come. Tell the police, I'm afraid. I'm scared she's gonna do something to me if you leave her. Please take her out of here. I don't know, and so we gotta stand in the pulpit, flat-footed, and teach the word of God. Now I know you can probably post a half a dozen or a dozen scriptures right now, telling a woman her place. And there are a lot of people who will stand and argue with me toe to toe. But I guarantee you this, if they sit down and talk with me for 30 minutes and I can show them in the Bible, they'll never again think that a woman is not equal to a man. It is a myth. It has always been a myth. We bought into it because there was a time I bought into it. I haven't always had this persuasion. This came through much prayer, through much study, through understanding the word, you see. And God made us different. Yes, he did that. And he set a divine order, but he also empower the woman. She is under attack. Why do you think when the woman who touched Jesus' garment, watch this, the woman that pressed through the crowd, and the Bible says that Jesus felt the virtue when it left her. Now, for years you've heard, oh, who can find a virtuous woman? Well, I always tell people that virtue is a male trait. And if you study the word virtue, it means, ver means man, and virtue means manliness. So who can find a manly woman? First of all, who wants a manly woman? You see. So it must be talking about something else. When Jesus touched the hem, when the woman touched the hem of Jesus' garment, he said he felt the virtue when it left him. So where did virtue come from? It came from Jesus. It came from a man. Jesus said, daughter, thy faith has made you whole. She was well. She was healed. Virtue, we've got to speak strength. We've got to speak it into our daughters. It's got to come first from us. They got to touch us and receive their strength and their empowerment and stand in their place. So it's got to be addressed from the pulpit. It has to be. And it has to be a no-nonsense approach. We ain't even playing with it. If you put your hands on her, then you need to be locked up.
Totally agree.
And then you need some, if the marriage can stand, because I do believe it can, but it's going to be kind of hard. I don't know how a woman can be affectionate to a man who abuses her.
Yeah, that's a whole nother show right there. Yeah. How do you rebound back, back, off of that? It's a great question though.
After they abuse them, to submit to them sexually.
Right.
Men are wanting women after they have been physically and verbally assaulted to now submit to them sexually. Really?
Ooh.
I don't think so. And the reason why that cannot happen is because how can you be affectionate? How can you have the affection required in a relationship when you've just been assaulted last week?
Last hour.
Or last month? Or 6 months ago?
Yes, you're bringing up some very, very good questions and points, and I think that's probably worthy of another show.
I'm sorry.
No, that's good. It's good to make us think, and please don't ever apologize. You always have an open mic with us, and I always appreciate your insight and all that God gives you, too, and even looking at certain, subjects and situations that we probably wouldn't even know, how to look at or what have you. But I appreciate you calling in, Dr. Hunt, and taking time out on today, because I know you're a busy man, so I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you for letting me.
Oh, you're so welcome. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Apostle, oh my goodness, can you touch that button for me? He touched on so much. One of the first things he talked about when I asked him the question was dealing with your daughters.
Yeah.
Equipping them, so to speak. You started saying that before he called in.
Right. And even, I have two daughters. Okay. I have my oldest is actually 24 years old. And I remember when she was in college, just talking with her and just being concerned because I know about college and I know what happens and everything that could happen. And I had a talk with her, and I told her, I remember telling her that I, as a father, I was concerned, but if I give you certain instructions, if I tell you the right things as a father, then even when you're not in my presence, if you abide by those things, I'm still covering you. And so I think what we have to do as fathers is we have to pour into our daughters the necessary things that they need to hear to equip them to deal with whatever. And I know, it's difficult because certain subject matter is like almost after you deal with it, you don't want to take away their innocence by dealing with certain things. But it's almost like you have to, my 14-year-old, she's getting to that place where, and she's a beautiful young lady. She's 14, but she can pass for older. And so you don't want her to be naive in certain situations. She's going out waiting for a bus with her headphones on, not being aware. And I'm like, no, we gotta shift that, because there's always going to be there's somebody out there. We can't account for everybody's actions. There's too many random things out there. And what's happening now is not anything new. This Me Too movement, the movement is new. The behavior that sparked the movement is not. What we're seeing in the White House, what we're seeing, I watched that video with Justice Kavanaugh's wife, and I felt so bad for her. Just the body language, and she looked so timid. And I'm not saying or trying to speculate that there was any kind of physical abuse, but she was obviously
She's
timid
uncomfortable
and afraid and uncomfortable. And so why I would not want a relationship with anyone when my counterpart is afraid of me. That's not, and I think that as men, Dr. Hunt he's doing so much. This culture that men are superior to women. And I'll admit it, I bought into it. But see, that's what we have to do as men. The same way that we expect, even with the racial tensions and the movements and the things that we want. Watch this. We want Caucasian leaders to stand up in their pulpits and denounce racism in the body of Christ. That's an expectation of Black pastors and some of them are responding to that. They're saying, okay, as a white leader, I'm standing against this. I'm standing with my African American brothers and sisters. And so I'm letting you know that I'm not a part of the culture that oppresses or discriminates. That's what we have to do as men. The greatest advocate for women right now have to be men, because we have to stand against other men and say this is unacceptable. And I think what we do is we have created a culture where, because women have been labeled as not what men are or inferior to men, we are conditioning women to take abuse. Because if it's coming from someone who is superior, if he's superior to me, then he can do whatever he wants. And it may not be physical abuse, but maybe it's verbal abuse. If he's superior to me, then that means he can talk to me any kind of way. And I got to take it because I'm inferior. And I think that when we preach that, and Dr. Hunt has laid it out, you got to go look at that video, Adam, you hypocrite. When we perpetuate that myth, that notion that women aren't as strong as men, then we are buying into that culture that we are superior and that we can have them be subservient to us. And I got 2 daughters. It's as simple as that with me. I'm gonna tell you, I started to wake up when I started looking at my daughters. And we preach from the pulpit that a woman should submit to a man. What if that woman is stronger than a man? That's a real scenario.
In what sense of the word?
Not physically.
Okay.
But mentally. What if she's more fiscally responsible? What if she has a superior education? What if I've seen situations where in the relationship, the man is more emotional than the woman. So God forbid that my daughter should be in a relationship like that. As a father, I am not going to tell my daughter to submit to a man who is not strong, who she is stronger than. I'm setting her up to be mishandled. And now I would hope that I would give her enough input and pour into her enough to where she wouldn't um, uh, settle for that kind of relationship. But I see those relationships every day. I see those relationships where the woman, quite frankly, other than physically, she's the strongest person in the household.
Ooh, that's
That's
deep.
real.
That is real.
And to be told that despite that you are inferior. See, the closest thing that I can equate that to is me being, as a black man, being in a boardroom of people who are not black, white, and me knowing that I am intellectually and academically superior, knowing it, but being in a culture where I have to submit to those who feel like I'm not, just because of the color of my skin. I live that, even in corporate America. And so that's the same thing that a woman has to deal with in a room full of men. And we do things, certain things that are so condescending, and it's a part of the culture, and we don't know how offensive it is. The same way that we're offensive racially with certain things I said, sweetheart, sweetie, we don't know how condescending we're being. We're putting them in their place. And all these things have to shift because they feed into a culture that conditions people to think, male and female, that the woman is inferior, when a lot of times that is not the case. A lot of times it's not. And Dr. Hunt says something. He says something on that video, Adam, you hypocrite, that just blew my mind. And I almost, when I was watching it, I was just about to throw my phone. I was like, and he was talking about how it is a woman's job to challenge a man. See, men, when a woman challenges us, we feel funny about that. We don't want to be challenged.
As if you should be doing the challenging.
Well, it's almost like,
or don't challenge me.
Don't challenge me. Just don't challenge me. But a woman, a lot of times, even the interaction with the man, the result of it should be that she challenges him to be better, to become more. And there are a lot of things that women worry about that men don't worry about. But when they bring it to us, because they are the wisdom, God's wisdom to us, we should consider it. We're supposed to consider it, and we're supposed to allow that challenge to not be an opposition, but an opportunity to rise to an occasion. And what we do is, when a woman challenges us, if we're insecure in any way, then we will lash out. We will lash out. And he made a point to where many times what happens, even in verbal and or physical abuse that is perpetrated by the husband, it usually, a lot of times, it happens after he felt like he was challenged. And in that moment of him being challenged, he felt insecure and inferior to her. And his only answer was to lash out. He could not rise to the occasion. He didn't see it as an opportunity for him to be better. He felt insecure, intimidated, and inferior to her, and his only answer. And so, as men, we have to be taught and retaught that any kind of physical violence, any kind of physical hitting is a result of insecurity. You must be insecure about something. If you're going to resort to hitting, you're going to resort to violence, you're going to resort to disrespecting her verbally, that's born out of insecurity. And that does not speak of strength at all. That's a weakness.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I'm looking here on Facebook Live, and there are a few comments. Oh, there's so many different ways I want to go with this on today, but we're going to try and have a certain. We'll go as the Lord leads. But let me do this. Let me read a few comments here. Let's see. I see you on here, Pastor Marshall. Thanks for watching on today. There was a comment down here. Buddy Gill. Let me see if I can get down to it. Oh, if we can find it. Hello. He was mentioning about, or he gave his opinion about the church. Okay. As for the church's response to domestic violence, I think many of our pastors may not be properly trained when dealing with the root of the problems. I think it's more than prayer and fasting and Bible study. Let's put our faith to work.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with
Some
that.
people need counseling, and what we have to understand, even as pastors, we want to, sometimes as pastors, we want to be the complete answer to every problem, and we try to be, but some people, sometimes you have to send people out to get help. You have to refer them to certain doctors and psychologists. You have to tell them where they can get help, because he's absolutely correct. Prayer and fasting can help, but if I don't have the tools to assist in that, if I don't have the knowledge to assist in that, then it's not going to profit me as much as it could. And so, sitting in front of someone who is skilled and able to deal with that and dissect the root cause of it, because you find a lot of these. I dealt with a young man who flat out told me, and he admitted to hitting his wife. He admitted to it, but he flat out told me that I grew up seeing that. I grew up seeing it. I saw my dad do it, my uncles do it, my older brothers do it, and it was just what was acceptable. And I know it's wrong, but because I saw it for so long, it was ingrained in me. And so and I felt bad for him, but at the same time, I had to say this: you still an adult, and at the end of the day, you got to keep your hands to yourself.
Sure.
Because just like Dr. Hunt said, the next time you reach out to her for something else and she don't respond, you're going to wonder why. And then you're going to want to do it again.
Right.
Which perpetuates it.
Every action causes a reaction.
Yeah.
When you mentioned that about the abuser, basically, and probably what they have been used to seeing, that's a very good point. Before you said that, I was just reading this comment from RLG. I think this says here, men who have been made to feel that way has at some point in their lives been put under that very treatment. So I believe she's even kind of referring to what you just said, even though she made that comment earlier. But that can even be related to that, because, and as, you were talking, as Dr. Hunt was talking, I'm thinking, and, some of the articles I've read, the abuser themselves, they get this from somewhere.
Absolutely.
Of course, that's a whole nother topic. That's a whole nother show too, because if that's all you've seen all your life, maybe mama beating daddy or daddy beating mama, then when you get married, you're going to think, well, that's the way I handle it.
Even the victim can be conditioned
True.
to feel like that's normal.
Yes.
If she thought that, you know, even I talk about my daughters. As a parent, I made a comment. I made a post a couple last week about as a child being spanked by my parents. I got spankings coming up. I wasn't abused, but I got spankings. And I spanked my children. Now, my daughter, my youngest daughter, oldest daughter never spanked her in her life. Never spanked her. Youngest daughter, she's 14. I stopped spanking her a while ago, especially when she started developing and coming into womanhood. She's a young lady. And even though she's a girl, she's having woman thoughts. She's evolving into a woman. Her body is changing emotionally, chemically, everything. And so here's what I don't want to do. I am not going to spank her because I'm already thinking ahead 7, 8, 9, 10 years down the line when she's in a relationship. And I don't want her to be conditioned to think that a physical reprimand is acceptable. No, my daddy stopped. I was a little girl when he stopped spanking me. And because I'm already as a father working on her mentality as a woman. See, that don't start when she's 18, 19, 21. No, I'm starting dealing with her psyche and her mentality as a woman now when she's a little girl. I'm working on her self-esteem now so that we don't have to fix. And I think that's the problem. Even as victims are conditioned. And we don't even know how many years it took that victim to be conditioned to believe that this is normal and this is okay.
Kamisha's Hunt, I have to throw her in here because she shared her story when she was on here.
Absolutely.
She said that, the abuse that she suffered, she thought it was normal.
She thought it was normal. She thought as a little, and then she went on to say that, and I know she doesn't mind me saying this because she deals with her testimony, that and this is what women go through, they feel like some kind of way it was their fault.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And just the agony. And I remember the first time she told me that, the agony of feeling as a little girl that you somehow contributed to your abuse. You know what I mean? And so we have to start dealing with our young ladies and even with our young boys. I teach my son, you don't hit your sister. Don't, and he's 2.5 years younger than her, but he's just as big as her now. And she'll hit him playfully and he'll just haul off. And I'm like, no, she hit me no, it's not the same thing. You already stronger than her. You don't hit her. And then I come at him like this. How are you going to protect her if you are part of the society or the culture that perpetuates violence against her? You can't protect her then.
I love your mentality. I love it. I love it. And we need more of that. We need, and I'm so glad again. I mean, because you're an apostle, you're a man of God, you're in the church, and I love to hear, this. And this is also what Dr. Hunt was talking about. I mean, how you teach, you empower your daughters, you teach them, you instruct them, and this is something that we definitely need to hear because. Again, the world is looking at the church. It is looking at the church and how we are responding to, these situations, and what are we saying about it? Are we, are we encouraging it, or are we, sometimes your silence, sometimes people think it's encouraging it, or, when you don't speak against it, they're like, okay, where are you? We can't hear you, church. What are you saying?
Hmm.
So this is good to hear on today. Let me read this. Buddy Gill says here that verbal abuse, so many fail to understand the power of words. I can say something to a person and cause that person to go and get their gun and come back to take my life. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. Totally agree with that. And there's so many other comments on here. RLG says here, challenges should build, not tear down. Queens are uplift the king in him. Oh, queens should uplift the king in him. I believe that's what she's trying to say. Brandy wrote a comment here, and I'm sure she doesn't mind me reading it because she wrote it here. She says, she was told by an ex-mother-in-law right after her walking in on her and her son in a straight up brawl.
Hmm.
She was told that he woke up hitting me. No, I'm sorry, excuse me. Let me read it how she has it. I told her that he woke up hitting me. And her response to my fighting back was, baby, women don't fight men. Woo-hoo. Brandy also says here she was conditioned and had conditioned all her daughters in that mindset. Well, I know that she obviously told the wrong one because Brandy was not going to take that. And again, it goes back to what you're talking about, the condition of the mind and, the situation you're in. You're just thinking, okay, no, this is how it should be. No, my grandmother, God rest her soul, back in the day, she was like, baby, if he hitting you, get out the house, leave.
Absolutely.
Don't sit there and take us. You've heard, I've heard them. Oh, just stay there. Gotta work it out. Da, da, da. You gonna wake
Absolutely
up. Well, not wake up 6 feet under, but you'll be 6 feet under.
Why take that chance? And I was looking at a statistic, and it's a very low percentage, but there are a percentage of pastors who believe that even in the case of domestic violence, that divorce is unacceptable still. And I don't believe that. I believe that there are certain things that release you, and abuse is one of them. If you are being abused, um, um, be, the way I'm looking at it is that the marriage vows are all. If he's supposed to be loving you and honoring you, and um, covering you, abusing you is not that. So I don't understand the notion that some pastors and some leaders have that says that a woman should stay beyond that or endure that. Again, I got two daughters. See, I got two. There is no way on God's green earth that I would tell my daughters to endure abuse.
I was listening to add on to what you're saying. I was listening to the news on this morning. I believe it was Good Morning America. And if I can recall this story correctly, there's a young lady who she had actually, I don't even think she had been married a full year to this young man. And some of you may know this story, but this is my first time hearing it this morning. They call this case the cough medicine murder. This young man ended up stabbing his wife to death, and he blamed it on cough medicine. So they talked to the parents this morning and because I believe he's going to jail for the rest of his life, about the verdict that came in. Talked to her parents, her sister this morning, and the family was telling the reporter that we were seeing some signs going on. And, they were just crying and stuff. They felt so bad and everything, and they just wish they could have done something. And that father said, because the reporter, when you finally wrap up the interview, asked, what would you want to say to your daughter now? He said, I want to apologize to my daughter. He said, because I don't feel I did enough to protect her.
Oh, my God. My God.
And that touched me, because he said the last time he saw her, He saw that she was in distress, but he didn't even
He
ask
didn't
her
do it.
about it.
My God.
He didn't even say anything to her about it. And of course, his mind is going back now, and he's feeling that if he did, maybe he could have saved his daughter. Maybe she could still be here. And to hear you on today and how you keep talking about your two daughters, and I see Buddy Gill is on here too, and he's talking about his daughter. He said, you are the first man in your daughter's life. Teach her and show her. You'll then be the last man in her life as well. So this is not, this subject is not. I mean, we already talked about how sensitive it is. It's not anything that we can just pass by and just talk a little bit today from 12 to 2 and then we just go on. This is something we absolutely have to continue to address. We have to continue to hear, other situations, other people's stories, and seeing how we need to address this
Yeah.
and not allow our young ladies, because we're kind of focusing on the women today, being the abused, to go down that route. Whatever we can do to keep them, out of that route. Now, I know that I do have a call that is going to call in, and I believe that is that she's just calling now. Let me do this. Let me go ahead and take a quick break while we have her on the phone on hold right now. We're going to take a quick break so we can get it all set up, because I want you all to hear this young lady that is going to call in and share with us about domestic violence abuse. Please do not go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. We want to talk about this. We want to hear what she has to say. You listen to Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette. We're right here on Intellectual Radio.
God beside thee, and we stand here and reverence your name. For you are worthy to be lifted up. Please receive our sincere worship. For you are the mighty God we serve. Oh, the upper plan. The mighty God we serve. We serve a mighty God, mighty God. Let the angels bow down. Let heaven and earth adore him, yeah. God we serve.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back. This is Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette. We are here on Intellectual Radio. I am your host, Annette Harris. Thank you so much for joining us on today. If you are just now tuning in, you've missed some things, but you are right on time. Thank you so much for watching and or listening to us on this afternoon. We're here in the Chi-Town, and we are excited. My in-studio, I'm not even going to call you no guest anymore, host is Apostle Dion Hunt.
Amen.
Of So-Called the Center, and we have been talking about domestic violence abuse. This is the month where it is recognized, and I actually reached out to a young lady on, I believe it was just yesterday, and she so kindly decided and consented to join us on this afternoon. She's calling all the way from the Washington, D.C. area, and I have on the phone right now Adele Coleman. How are you on this afternoon?
I am well. Thank you very much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad that you have decided to join us. Adele, I reached out to her because she has a story to tell. She has been up close and personal with this, situation that we're talking about on today. And I wanted to see if she could share with my listeners, because sometimes I like to have personal accounts, so to speak, or something that people can kind of relate to. Sometimes, when I know that you dealt with a certain thing,
Mhm.
it's good to hear about it, and then seeing again how we can prevent and do this further. So Adele, I of course have been acquainted with this young lady for the past, what's a couple of years now.
Yeah, it's been a few years.
Okay, it's been a few years, and she is a beautiful young lady who ambitious and a producer in her own right, and she actually is. One of the millennials. I've had her on my show before. Actually, I've had her and my nephew, Michael DeBose. I see him on Facebook Live. I saw when he popped in. He popped in when you called in, but that's okay. Adele, just so you know, Adele is his fiance, and they're
Wow.
they're due to get married next year. So I'm excited for them.
Wonderful.
My niece and nephew. So he's listening in even as he's at work. So I wanted to get her on and kind of talk to us about this domestic violence abuse. Now, as much as you want to go into the personal account I want you to feel as comfortable as you can to talk about the situation that up close and personal. So maybe I don't know where you want to start, Adele.
Sure. Back in December of 2012, well, I'll rewind a little bit. My parents were married for 22 years, and they divorced back in, I want to say, 2003. And then my mom, started having, like, I guess, relationships after that, just kind of adjusting to, like, being single. And then in 2010, she met this man who worked at a local, like, supermarket, like, around the corner from our house. Because my mom was an avid walker, so she used to always walk through there. And they started dating, and I got to know him. And he was a really kind-hearted man, really sweet. He didn't really, I always gave him the little, everybody she dated. She only had like 2 boyfriends after my dad, him and another guy. Just kind of getting to know him, and always kind of giving him the speech like, I'm her daughter, and I'm always gonna look out for her best interest. My mom really did fall in love with him pretty heavy, and they had a pretty good relationship, or so it seemed. And they had been dating for about a year, and she was starting to talk about leaving, and I wasn't really sure why. We were pretty close, so she had always been transparent with me, and my mom just kind of wanted to be by herself. And so I guess in 2011, in December, went over to my mother's house to have dinner with them too. And then I left. I got home. I called my mom, told her I love her. And that was really the last conversation I had with my mom. That same night after I left, he had attacked my mother in her sleep. I guess they got into some type of argument, and she was pretty much fed up from what I've now grown to understand. And he attacked her in her sleep and stabbed her multiple times and murdered her. And unfortunately, I discovered my mom, and that was like my first encounter as far as someone outside of me, like that close to me, coming in contact with domestic violence. They did catch him. He is currently serving time, but domestic violence took my mother's life.
My God.
Yes, every time when she told me the story the first time, my heart just sank. And you said that was your first encounter with realizing domestic violence, and that in a sense, and I'm seeing the emotions here on Facebook Live, and people are very shocked, and for you to actually find your mother, that in itself heartbreaking.
Mhm.
But then you even mentioned, Adele, about how your mom started talking about moving away before then, and it was almost like she probably really wasn't acting herself. Is that what you would probably surmise?
Not necessarily, because when my parents broke up, my mom was very heartbroken. So it took a really long time before she let someone in that way. But my mom and I were extremely close. So she used to always just crack jokes and say it would just be me and her, me and her. So when she kind of started going back to that, it wasn't unusual because she had, done that in her previous relationship. Like, I just think I want to be by myself and like refocus herself on herself and kind of discover, I don't know what it's like to be in a relationship with someone for 20 something years and then to try to find your way after that, so it wasn't really unusual to me because my mom had always kind of been independent. My mom was like, I don't need anybody. I take care of myself. I just got you and God. I'm okay. So it wasn't really unusual for her to kind of want to move away from him or anyone else. And it was interesting because after the night before I found my mom, the night that I found my mom, I had been calling her all day long. Me and my mother talked all the time. And it was just weird to me that she wasn't answering the phone. And I had it long. Me and my mother talked all the time. And it was just weird to me that she wasn't answering the phone. And I had called him when I couldn't find her. And, earlier in the morning when I called him, he told me he dropped off at work. So I was like, okay, she'll just call me when she gets off work. When she hadn't, by that night, it didn't feel right going to sleep without not having spoken to my mother. So I called him back. And, he was saying, to me that basically him and my mom got into an argument and maybe she's just mad. He said something to the effect of, how your mom is when she's mad, she doesn't want to talk to anyone. And I remember saying to him, no, my mother will shut out the world, but she'll never shut me out. And something in my heart just said, go to her house. And so I did. And, that's when I went in. I called my friend who I just kind of left, who lives around the corner, and told her I was, headed out just to let her know. And she went to my mother's house with me. And that's where we went up to her bedroom and we discovered her.
My God.
Okay, I'm sorry. I that will place you at a loss for words. I thank you for your transparency and for sharing with us. Apostle, do you want to say?
Well, yeah, I was just sitting there thinking even how courageous you're being just by telling your story. It takes so much courage and as Annette said, transparency, just to be able to share your story. And the awesome thing about it is that it gives other people the courage to speak up and to speak out and sound the alarm even. And so I applaud it. You are being a voice even for your mother at this point. And that is something that is so honorable. I bless God for you. I really do. I really do.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And it's interesting that you say that because, when I decided to kind of start talking about it and looking, and looking and listening to other people's stories, it helped me. And I remember like when that happened, how alone I felt. And, just trying to find someone that I could relate to because I had friends who had lost their mothers, but none of their parents had been murdered. And, I remember going to my therapist and she's saying, well, you're a survivor. And I said to her, well, I didn't survive anything. I didn't do anything. If anything, I felt like regretful that I didn't stay that night or, I didn't go back or, and my dad always tells me, it's a blessing, unfortunately that I had to leave because, you never know, we could be in the middle of, 2 funerals instead of, having only one. But my hope is just that in me voicing what I went through, that it makes it real because I think nowadays, like we live in a society where you see those like crime shows and, TV shows and stuff that it kind of normalizes these things to the sense that it doesn't make it real.
We're desensitized by it, yeah.
Exactly. So I think by hearing someone's story and knowing that this is something that really does happen to people, you know, even for myself, I remember just feeling so many emotions, you know, like this isn't real, this is a dream, you know, like when am I going to wake up from this? You know, it felt like, you know, a TV show or something that just was very surreal, and it wasn't. It was my life. So it's like, I hope that in my voicing what I've gone through and, you know, my mother's story, it'll help people to have the courage to come forward, and also help to stop the desensitization of this and help us to be more sympathetic and supportive of each other, you know, in these times.
Definitely. I'm sorry, I had to let Apostle talk so I can gather myself. But yeah, I what I do appreciate, and I, until you told me the very first time of what happened to your mother, I would not have known, because this young lady, she carries herself in such a wonderful way. She's very strong,
Yeah,
very
I
strong.
can hear it in her voice.
And, you know, even though, you know, I'm sure if you think back on it, I've had memories or what have you, it could, yeah, I mean, because you're human. So it can bother you, but I appreciate how God has strengthened you, and how He has taken you this route. And this is, there's a certain time, you know, period that the Lord has it set up for you to share it, for you to, and I'm still waiting on that book. We've talked about that book.
Yeah.
I'm waiting on that, you know, because you're going to be able to help somebody else. You are. Like you said, you have had friends that experience their parents losing their parents, but you haven't had, you know, friends that experience what you've experienced. And, you know, God, of course, wants to get the glory out of all of it. We may say, well, how's that? You know, my mother was murdered, whatever, but He still wants to get the glory. And I believe He's going to do it through
Absolutely.
you. You have, and then he has blessed you with so many connections, Adele, you know, in the workplace, on the professional level, that He's going to allow you. And I'm not prophesying or anything, but I believe that He's going to open up doors for you to be able to share this on a wider platform. I firmly believe that. And again, it is going to be for His glory, so that He can get the honor. And so again, that this, you know, domestic violence can be addressed, and, you know, hopefully circumvented, made, you know, put a stop to it. You know, and all that we see, because we see so much. Oh yeah, this is something, I tell you, to even listen to. I'm seeing the comments here on Facebook Live. Jamone says here, what a testimony. He says he thanks God that his mother's still here, because domestic violence was in his home as well. And so many can relate to maybe their, you know, experiencing their parents or their children, loved ones or what have you, being abused. I'm sure there's so many that are listening and are watching us on today that can attest to this and can understand what it is that we are discussing. Did you want to add to that?
Well, I was just going to say that the thing that breaks my heart is the notion that there are so many people who are living and suffering in silence, because part of the culture also, you know, we grew up with folks saying, mind your business. Mind your business. This is none of your business. I have literally, I can remember as a child seeing a man and a woman fighting in the street. And when somebody would come and try to break it up, the man would say, mind your business, you know? And so, but what community does, when we are a community, we look out for one another. We report things that we see. Even if we can't stop it, even if we don't have the means to stop it, we report it. And so my heart aches for those who, because it's such a silent epidemic. Even like we were saying in the beginning, even in the church, that there's this notion where it's not my business, so I'm not going to speak on it. And I'm saying, even with leadership, I was looking at another statistic that said that there's a certain percentage of leaders that when it's reported, that they don't investigate. They don't investigate, There's a percentage that takes the woman's word for it or takes the victim's word for it off the bat, but then there are some that will investigate thoroughly before they take a side. But then there's some who just don't even investigate it, and that's so sad to me, because what does that say to the person who's actually reaching out for help?
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is a different type of abuse. See, the Me Too movement and domestic violence is not, I think they overlap, but they're not exactly the same thing.
No.
With the Me Too movement, that's so wide ranging, and it's dealing with, sexual harassment, rape, even sexual misconduct. It's dealing with a culture that takes advantage of women sexually. Whether the woman consented in that moment or not, if she was convinced to believe that this is what she was supposed to do. That's the Me Too movement. And you're seeing all these people come forward because we're seeing famous people. This has affected famous people. This has affected noteworthy people who we see on the big screen. But then domestic violence is happening. It happens, it's not on the front screen. You know what I mean? It's in your home. It's in your neighbor's home. It's in the neighbor, and it's so not talked about that there's shame that's involved. There's embarrassment that's involved. There's fear of coming forward. See, the Me Too movement, they're courageous because they have all these other people surrounding them saying,
Exactly.
Me Too. But when you're suffering domestic violence, a lot of times you feel alone. What are the consequences of me coming forward? What is going to be the repercussions? And I think we got to look at them differently. They're not exactly the same thing. Both of them is a travesty. Both of them are horrible, but they're not exactly the same thing.
Right. I'd agree.
Can I add something?
Yes, please.
To that as well. Also, I think it's important, even, when people see things happening, and you spoke about how people will step forward as kind of like mind your business, and then it also can determine be based upon where you're from, because like in my neighborhood it was like no one wants to be like labeled a tattletale or a snitch to the police, and it's like I had to ask people that I grew up who saw him, my mom's murderer, leaving the house. Like, what did you see? Well, I saw him, but I don't want to talk to the police. I'm like, what do you mean? It doesn't, you don't face any repercussions, but it's just like that whole, neighborhood mentality, of what you don't want to be labeled as, to lose credibility, even if it's at the sacrifice of someone that you once affectionately called your own mom, And I remember even my brothers kind of struggling with their friends in the neighborhood, like, hey, if this can help them find him, because it was a time between when it happened, it was December 3rd. When they caught him, it was January. So it was a whole month, and they were trying to gather a case and like find him and track him down and locate him. But then it was, trying to just build a case and build evidence to hold him, because they had caught him before, but they didn't have enough to hold him. And it just kind of came down to finally someone, I guess me and my brothers got through to him, like saying to him, if you saw him leaving, that pinpoints him there. I can pinpoint him there. If you could pinpoint him there, that helps. And then finally, him agreeing like, okay, I'll say something to the police. But it was just like that whole mentality of not wanting to be labeled or branded something, within your neighborhood that stops something. So it's even when we see things happening, a lot of times people think of their own, repercussions, be it, street credibility, or something else that, could keep someone in danger or worse. And another thing I wanted to say is a lot of times, like, in my mom's case, that was, from what he said and what was gathered, the first time he ever attacked her, and it caused her life. But it's people who, live in those environments where they see domestic violence a lot. And, even once the situation or the person is removed, we also have to pay attention to what's left behind. Like when my mom was killed, I dealt with anxiety and was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder because I was always just worried that he was going to attack me, or someone else was going to attack me, or I had gone through this trauma, and now I'm impacted by that. And I think that it's multifaceted. It's very layered. There are a lot of things, but even to this day, I still deal, with trauma and flashbacks and, certain things, like I'm engaged and I'd express to my fiance, like, hey, these are things I'm comfortable with. These are things I'm not comfortable with, just things that can trigger and like explain that. That's something that will be with me, for the rest of my life that I have to carry. And it's the same for like, when significant others or children or family members see these things happening to their loved ones. And, sometimes even if they speak up, they can now be a target, for the person. There is financial manipulation, mental manipulation. It's so many things that is layered within it beyond, the physical. And I think it's important, like even after the I guess the situation, so to say, has been removed, that needs to be addressed even within the people that are kind of left behind.
Wow. Yeah, it's so much. It's so much involved in that. And as you guys were talking about, how people don't really want to say anything and what you normally see, of course, that syndrome is that Genovese syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
but nobody wants to help.
Mm-hmm.
And and that came, of course, as a result of that young lady, last name was Genovese, that was killed, Kitty Genovese, years ago.
Yeah.
People they didn't want to say anything, but this young woman ended up being murdered, and that's what you all had to deal with, you and your brothers, trying to find, and I didn't know it was that span of time, that month, before they actually convicted this guy or caught him, I guess. And it just makes you wonder. It makes you wonder about even what symptoms or what did you see leading up to it that make you that would have raised your antennas,
Mm-hmm.
about him or the relationship or what have you. Because I was going to ask you that. Was there anything that you saw prior to maybe in their relationship or your mom's actions or something that would kind of make you think that something's not right there, or he's not necessarily. How old were you at that time?
24. It
Okay.
was right before my 25th birthday.
Okay. Yeah, so she was in her early 20s. So, some things may have been there, but you probably just didn't really, sometimes we don't really see some things or what have you. But yeah, this is something. And you even talked about your behavior afterwards, or what you are dealing with yourself as a result of that. Now, we'll let you know, of course, Christ can take all that away. He can help you with that, anxiety and all that. You don't have to live with that for the rest of your life. I want you to know that, he can heal you. And I mean, because he knows exactly what you're feeling. He knows what you're dealing with, even to this hour, he knows. And even sharing it and bringing it up again and, rustling up all those feelings and everything. He understands. Christ understands, and he knows, and he can definitely help you and heal you totally and completely. I just wanted to say that, just so you'll know, and hopefully you'll receive that. Did you want to add on to that?
Well, absolutely. And like I said earlier, just the fact that she's talking about it is indicative of her strength, and just she's overcoming it now.
Yes.
I feel her overcoming it now.
Yes.
And there's a peace, there's a strength, and comfort that God is going to give you as you continue to overcome it. You are strong. I don't want to be ignorant and say that you don't know how strong you are, but I just feel so much strength from you, and so much determination, and just courage, and honor from your mother. And God is going to honor all of that. And there's no doubt in my mind that complete healing is yours. It's yours.
Yes.
It's yours. And just the fact that you are surrounded by people who care and who love you and who are concerned about what happened and what you had to endure and the residual effect. God knows how to place you around people who will aid in your healing and deliverance and recovery. And so I thank God for your testimony. I thank God for your testimony.
You okay on there?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay.
Sorry, I muted the phone because I was coughing. But,
okay.
sorry about that. But, thank you very much. And, I have my mom and my dad. I remember, like, just being so grateful that I had my father, during that time as well. And, I looking back and even, like, how far I've come now, my brothers and I will talk a lot about it. We've had a lot of, like, trauma and things we've experienced. I had a sister who passed away very early, in my life. And, we kind of went through a lot of things. And, after my mother passed away, it was just a series of a lot of deaths in our family. But I remember, those early days and kind of, feeling anxious and, just depressed severely, not wanting to leave the house. And, once I kind of went through my own stuff and, like, journey and just my own, like, just had a moment within myself. I remember just kind of crying out, to my mom and, just wanting her near and stuff. And I always say there's no such thing as a coincidence, only circumstance, that God places things in your life for purpose. And that doesn't just so happen, I feel like, for me. And I remember just kind of sitting in the dark, and I found a book that I had given my mom, like a journal, and I didn't think that she ever wrote in it. And I opened it, and it was just a prayer for me. And, it was in that moment that, I realized that, I wasn't turning away from God. I wasn't turning away from anything. I was asking for help. I was needing someone around me, because this was still, even after, my mom's death, I still had to, bury my mom. I still had to go to court. I still had to face the trauma every day on different levels. And I just kept turning to my mom's prayer for me. And, in it, she acknowledged her faults and that she wasn't perfect, but she would always be God's child. And I will always be her child. And even to this day, I'll go back to that when I feel down. I feel like my mom still talks to me, or, God puts the right people in my life. Like I have felt very alone, especially like after my mom died and my grandmother died and my aunt died. I lost 3 of the strongest women that I held on to in my life. And even now, God is, restoring me. I've been praying for that, with my new aunties coming in and, the new family that I'm coming into, and even just how just being open, and it's helping me, to be a better mom, to my daughter, and to help her to get to know my mother. And I have my mom and God to thank for that, because I know for a fact that if I didn't have that moment, if, when I'm feeling down, I'll smell my mother's scent around me. If it wasn't for those things, I would be worse, and I know I wouldn't be here. And, I just appreciate, you, and I just appreciate, God just working through me, even with my partner, just putting somebody in my life that, is just open to hearing me and doesn't grow tired of hearing me, and even if he may see my things as strange or, unusual or different, he understands, and he tries to be empathetic to my trauma, and help me to work through. Because, like after something like that happens to your mom, you're like, I don't want to be with nobody. I don't trust anyone in this world. I would just rather walk through. But the person I am today, able to talk about it, able to walk around, able to sit in public spaces, able to interact with people, that is night and day to the person that I was
Wow.
when my mother lost her life.
Oh my goodness. Definitely, definitely. And I was gonna say, yeah, you got the right one. And I'm not just saying that because he's my nephew, because I know how caring he is and how he just really takes time out and listens. Now he did get that listening from his dad. I will say that much. But he takes time out and he listens and he really cares. You can see the care on his face. We always say he's always smiling. Always. If you know my nephew, he's always smiling. Adele, you know what I'm talking about. But that's just indicative of what's in his heart too. And I'm appreciative, also that God is blessing you to be able to come in contact with family that loves you and are here for you. Because again, something like that, it's traumatic. Different ones, we go through different things in our lives. Even when I lost my brother, it was traumatic for me. I had some situations that I had to deal with after losing him, and it was heart wrenching to me. It was heartbreaking. It's like I was at the point, Adele, I didn't trust anybody. I didn't trust any. If you didn't have my blood running through your veins, I didn't trust you. I didn't even want to be around you because I couldn't understand how somebody else could take someone's life like that. That life didn't belong to you, but you took it.
And that's the thing that we don't understand about people. We come in contact with people, and all we are confronted with, all we consider is the here and the now. Why is she acting like that? Why is she this? Why? We don't consider the backstory of why people are the way that they are. You mentioned something about not being able to be in public spaces. We can label that. We can label someone who's dealing with that as, or something's not right in their head. But that's true because of what she went through.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It doesn't just mean that there's something wrong. No, something happened to her, or something happened in her life that has brought her to this point to where now she's uncomfortable. And so, like I said, we really have to begin to foster a community and a culture that makes it easier for people to say, I need help. I need help. This is what I'm battling. This is what I'm dealing with. This is what I'm trying to recover from. And if we don't become empathetic to what people are dealing with and going through, then we're not going to promote healing like that. We're not.
Exactly. And earlier, Adele, in the show, we were talking about the church's response to domestic violence. I'm not sure if you were able to listen in on any of it or not, but this still all ties in because the church. I mean, we have an awesome responsibility, as the body of Christ, and how we address these situations that affect people on a daily, a regular basis. We can't just come in, every Sunday and just preach to the four walls.
Absolutely. And I've had people cry out for help. I've had people come in my congregation and say, this is happening to me. And I tried to counsel it. I tried to talk to them. I tried to handle it. I'll admit to becoming angry and wanting and having the feeling of wanting to do something physically, because that's how appalling that I thought that was. And then to see the roller coaster ride and look him in the eye and see him wanting help, but didn't know how to get help himself. I'm praying for him. I'm taking him through scripture. But at this stage, he's already a grown man. So a lot of what he's acting out is stuff from his childhood. And so it got to a certain point to where I said, call the police. Never again. Never again. Because I can't have that on my conscience. This was reported to me. This was a cry for help. And as a leader, I cannot cover this, because covering him continues to expose her to danger. And so I was just like,
You
okay,
can repeat that
you know,
again.
covering him is going to expose her to danger.
Yes.
So I just said, you know what? If you don't report it, I will.
And see, that's what we have to. We got to get to that point, in our churches, because again, I think it starts with us. I really do in the church, of talking about this stuff and not sweeping this stuff under the rug.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because I remember at the day of my mother's funeral, and everyone was just kind of wondering in whispers. I had heard about if I was going to keep the casket open because she had a lot of trauma to her neck and to her face. But I decided that I would because, I just didn't want to give the impression, that, I didn't want people to come in whispering like, what did he do to her? That is a closed casket. Oh my goodness. And, I'm grateful to the funeral home because they did a great job, and like restoring my mother's face as much as they could. But I remember kind of sitting there alone on the front pew, just listening to the sermon. And the main pastor, he wasn't there. It was his son. And he gave this sermon. He started his sermon with, we're not going to ignore what brought us here. We're not going to, pretend like, he was like, she wasn't sick. She didn't have a random accident. She was attacked. And he was very transparent about that. And he went on, to kind of preach about, looking out for each other. He gave the story of a father and a son in the yard. And the father said to the son, lift up this rock. And the son tried and said, I can't do it. And like after multiple attempts, he couldn't do it. And the son said, I can't do it. And the father said, did you use all your strength? And he said, I did. And he was like, no, you didn't, because you didn't call on me to help you the way we need to call on God. And, that really stuck with me. And I remember afterwards, my brother was very angry. Like, why would he talk about, why would he say that mom was murdered? Why would he, bring attention to that? Why would he, say that to these people? And I said to my brother, it's no secret. This was in the news. This was in the newspaper. Everyone who knows us knows. Where she worked, all her coworkers, everyone knows. I have more respect and appreciation for him for acknowledging, what's going on and why we're here, and not sugarcoating it, bringing attention to it, talking about how we need to change and support each other, talking about how we need to have each other's back, taking it and kind of utilizing it as a lesson to speak up and to speak out. And if you don't know what to do and you can't help, being able to call on someone else to help you as well. And, that was going on 5 years ago. And I still remember that because, I will admit, I was surprised that he went that direction, but I could appreciate it that we weren't up there pretending that it was something that it was not.
Yes. And that was maturity on your part, to realize and understand why he did what he did, because again, we have to address this stuff. We be transparent. This is what happened, because you don't know who else you're helping.
You don't.
You don't know what other situations you're preventing to happen. And again, I mean, I still, and the reason why I lay on the church stuff, because, I grew up in the church, and I just think we just have an awesome responsibility. We really do. We really do. Because again, the world is looking at us. It is looking
Absolutely.
at us.
And the whole idea of, I think because the reason why it's so silent in the church is because embarrassment. The church a lot of times shy away from things that bring embarrassment because we're not supposed to be like the world. But we fail to realize that the church is really a hospital for sick people.
Come on.
Everybody in there is sick. We're not perfect. If we were perfect, we wouldn't need the church. And so we need to speak up. We need to talk about certain things. I'm looking at what the elder Kevin McGee said. And you said it in the beginning of the show. Even the the male victims, and there are instances of male victims, and there are men um, um, who will suffer and not retaliate because of the embarrassment. It's embarrassment for them too, and so you know we have to not allow embarrassment and anticipated ridicule to keep us in bondage
Silent.
to abuse and violence.
Yeah.
You see.
I agree. Totally agree. Brandy's, I believe she was commenting to Elder B's comment.
Mm-hmm.
Let me read his comment first. Many men were brought up to never fight a woman, and so they end up with a violent woman and winds up being battered. And she says, Elder Kevin McGee, many women use the fact that an honorable man would never hit a woman, no matter what, and they take advantage. Absolutely.
That
She said that's a
happens.
concern for her. She has 3 sons. What are you going to say? It
Well,
happens.
I was watching a show. I don't even know what the name of the show is. I was, you're getting dressed in the morning and the TV is on. Whatever that show that Whoopi Goldberg is on.
The View.
The View, yeah. And Whoopi Goldberg was dealing with that. The fact that, okay, I think some women, and she made the comment, some women take for granted that every man is chivalrous and every man is never going to hit a woman. And they take advantage of that, not knowing that there are some men that if you hit them, they will hit you back. And she said, you need to consider that before you hit a man, because at the end of the day, violence is violence. And I think she made a very good point. She was not well received, but I see the point that she was trying to make. There are some men who might not ever hit you initially, but they will hit you back. You see, but at the point I want to make is just violence is violence. If anybody is hitting, call the police.
Yes.
Call the police.
Yeah, you have to. Let me do this. Adele, don't go anywhere. I want to see if we can get that. Elder McGee did submit a poem, spoken word for today's topic. I want to see if we can play that right now and then come back before we end the session. So let me see if while my producer's getting that ready, let me read this. No, we'll just, because we're running out of time here. So I just want to go ahead and let me see if I have any comments here that I have not read here. Brandy says, also, I've literally watched my little brother to be slapped in the face every morning at the bus stop. Oh my goodness. Oh, well, yeah, that's indicative of a feisty woman there, huh? Angela Lane, I see you on. Thank you. Please do so, sweetie. I understand you're at work. So she just now joining us. Buddy says here, many were trained up with what goes on in this house stays in this house. Mm-hmm. So we don't talk. And yes, there's the embarrassment factor. Mm-hmm. Then there's the lack of ability to trust others with your story and to handle it properly. Yeah, and I agree with all that.
Yeah.
I will also say this much. A lot of times we know what's going on.
Yeah.
But we don't want to touch it or acknowledge it, because if I acknowledge it, then I got to touch it.
I have the responsibility.
Okay. I think our poem is ready.
Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. And a love that abuses is not love, but it is a hate crime, because the abuser hates love, because in all their years they never learned what love is. Maybe it's because this crime has been perpetrated on them and masked under the guise of love. And so they feel you have to abuse what you love. If that was the case, then don't love me. You see, I'd rather be your enemy than the object of your affection. So if you hurt the one that you love, then maybe you will respect the one you hate. Whatever the case, abuse is not love. And the truth of the matter is, the abuser who does the hurting never realize that they're also abusing themselves. And so, failed relationship after failed relationship, they're in a never ending cycle, abusing spouse, children, even parents. Love isn't love until it's given away. And if this is the love that you're giving, then please hate me.
Whew. That Elder McGee. Thank you
Yeah,
so much. Elder McGee
yeah.
has a show here on Saturdays, 12 noon Central Standard Time, entitled Connections. He always provides a spoken word poem for the topic of the day for mind, body, and soul. And that was on point again.
Again,
Again. Adele, did you get a chance to hear that poem?
Yes, ma'am.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. I thought it was very, very powerful.
Yes, definitely, for sure. Did you want to say something on it?
well,
Go ahead.
can I give out the hotline?
Okay,
I found a
please do.
hotline.
Yes.
There's a help on domestic violence hotline, and you can get counseling and find out what your options are, your legal options. Because sometimes you just want to know what your options are legally, if there's a shelter available. And so that number is 1-877 863 6338. That's 1-877 863 6338. And I'm giving out that hotline because, like we said, you know what? Sometimes you don't want to talk to someone because sometimes it's that, you know, same mentality. I don't want people in my business. I don't want people to give people stuff to talk about or gossip about. Here's a hotline where you can talk to somebody on the phone that you don't even know, and just get your story out, find out what your options are, report it, and then go on from there. But I felt it necessary while we're dealing with this subject matter to give out at least one resource. This is an anonymous uh, hotline that you can call 24 hours a day. It's confidential and it's multilingual. And so again, take advantage of that one more time. 1-877-863-6338 or 6339.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Apostle, because that is definitely something we can take down. There may be somebody listening. They may not even want to share what they're dealing with right now. Go call the anonymous hotline. However we can get you to get the help that you need, we want to do that on today. I don't have to know. We call it anonymous. If you want to call your pastor or whoever, call them. Just make sure you get help. And again, we've got to speak up about this. We've got to talk about this. We've got to address it. We just have to. We just have to. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Before we end on today, Adele, do you want to give us any final comments or, about whether what you've talked about or maybe something you've missed you want to share with us?
I just kind of wanted to say from like the poem and a couple other notes that, I just think it's important that, you just keep your hands to yourself. And if you feel like for the people who might feel the urge to hit someone or that aggression and that anger, like there are spaces that are available for you as well, because it all kind of nests and starts from somewhere. And I think, it's important that before it gets to that level, that you take the time and try to find a space to operate in, that helps you on the mental level and emotional level, so that you can better control your emotions without putting your hands on anyone. Because I do agree, like domestic violence happens to men, women, children. It doesn't discriminate. So I think it's important that we take mental care of ourselves and get the help that we need. No matter what side of it you are on, before it gets to that level or that bad.
Beautiful. I totally agree with you because, of course, if you all know Annette, I always like to look at all sides of it. Sometimes the abuser, again, I mean, we addressed it a little bit. Sometimes they're only going off of what they've seen or maybe something else going on that they've dealt with. And this is how they feel that they're going to respond. But yeah, I love it when you say, keep your hands to yourself. Love it. I think you said that also, Apostle. Keep your hands to yourself. Well, how about you pick up the phone and call the abuse hotline? How about you do that? Do that with your hands. All right, there we go. And pray. All right. I am appreciative of both of you on today, Apostle Hunt, as always, for joining me here in the studio. Adele, for taking time out today, calling, and again, being transparent and sharing your story. I'm sure that might not have been easy, but again, we thank you and we appreciate you for your strength. There was a comment that Brandy made earlier. She mentioned about your strength. Your strength is, and I'm hopefully I can find it real quick. She mentioned about, oh, here it is. She says your strength and transparency honors your mother's memory.
Oh, thank you.
So you keep that in mind as you're going on and you're dealing with things, and sometimes when things come back up in your mind and you're rehearsing it over and over. Think about that. Think about that.
Thank you very much.
You're so welcome. I love you, girl, and thank you again. And this won't be your last time. We'll have you back on again, okay?
No problem. Love you too.
Okay, love you. All right, can you hit that on and off button for me? This has been another great show here on Mind, Body, and Soul. I'm excited because I believe we had the listeners and the watchers. Thank you so much for joining us on today, Facebook Live, YouTube, and also listen to the station's website for your input on today. There's so many of you that joined in. I didn't get a chance to call your name. Celeste, I see you. I believe Bishop from Vegas, Bishop White.
My brother.
All right. Thank you for watching from Vegas. Appreciate you. I did call out Angela's name. Elder Kevin McGee, thank you again for that spoken word. Joe McCord. And he had comments on here too. So he grew up in a domestic violence in his home. He said, but it taught him as a man what not to be.
That's what I'm talking about.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Let's see. Jamone, I think I did call your name out. Oh, goodness. Dr. Hunt, again, thanks for calling earlier.
Absolutely.
RLG, you've given so many comments. Thank you so much for your input on today.
Yes.
I'm scrolling up before I end on today. But, again, the sensitive subject, we had to address it. Of course, there's never enough time. We never can find enough time to address, situations as such. So I don't know. Maybe we can get another show in about this sometime soon. But again, this was the month to acknowledge this awareness of domestic violence, and it's so prevalent. But again, the church has a responsibility to address it, and that's our focus on today. Did you want to say anything else before we leave?
I think I said it all.
He said it all. Okay.
Not quite, but
okay. All right. You still got something in the tank there.
Well,
all right.
I don't want to get started and go over.
Okay. All right. That's fine. He's practicing temperance. Thank you so much. I appreciate you again. And My Body and Soul is collaborating with Soul Call November.
Yes.
We want you to stay tuned. But we have a special meet and greet coming up. And if you have not received your invitation, no, if you haven't responded, because I'm sure you received it, then please respond. We're going to have a great meet and greet to kick off this broadcast. Thank you, Earl, for the time here at Intellectual Radio. My Body and Soul is getting off the air now. So until next time, I want you to get caught up with
You've
Annette.
Just been listening to Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette, where your host, Annette Harris, provided you with psychological and biblical insight for your everyday concerns. Need more insight? Visit Annette's Facebook page at Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette. Don't forget, tune in next week for Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette.